Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Q&R Code with your twin co-hosts, Quinn and Riley. This is Quinn. On the other side in Virginia is Riley, and I'm in Colorado, just so you have a little perspective of where we are if you are new here. Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to the podcast. Happy July. And today, Quinn and I are going to just get right into talking about our topic pertaining to July. July the 4th, a little day also known as Independence Day that is fraught with a lot of emotions on any side of the spectrum with your relationship to it. For some people, favorite day. For some people, refuse to even celebrate. And we're going to get a little bit into our thoughts and feelings. We are fully going to be discussing that as our topic for today's episode.
A small, minor deep dive. Well,
but as you know, that even if Quinn and I talk about something for an hour straight, we've only gotten a little bit into it because we crave thorough discussion and nuance. So we reserve the right to not feel like we've expressed everything fully and perfectly regardless.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say, is even though we're going to be deep diving, I'm sure that we will end this episode and I will be in my car on the way to work and think, oh my gosh, I didn't say that, or did I say this correctly? So I know that heading into this topic, like Riley said, there can be some big feelings with Riley and I standing on the side that we do politically, which is just progressive in terms of wanting human rights, wanting to preserve public land and our freedoms, etc. I know that a lot of people on that side have been boycotting the 4th of July, but we are going to get into a little bit about why we celebrate it. So I, first of all, just feel when I think of the 4th of July, it's so nostalgic to me because that was always a holiday that we would celebrate with family, with our grandparents on their ranch. And so I think so fondly of like a summer day, riding horses, our grandma having us sing the national anthem on horseback, just fresh, like it gives me such those nostalgic summer vibes of there's cherries around and fresh delicious fruit, like we're having peaches in the morning, and then later in the day we're having hot dogs and a little bit of a barbecue situation and some corn, and in the evening it's exciting and we're setting off little fireworks. Like I feel really grateful, and I think that a lot of Americans, at least around our age, it seems like, have a nostalgic feeling where it was a pretty fun holiday to celebrate because it's lax, you're doing outdoor activities, you're spending time with loved ones, you're eating and drinking yummy stuff. So that's kind of how I just feel about it when I'm thinking on it. And I love holidays. I love a holiday. I love being festive. I love decorating and dressing up. I just think holidays are milestones that throughout the year keep me excited and keep me anticipating, the next thing, because we all know that we've gone through some dark times. So when dark times are happening, or in general in life, when I have been going through waves of depression or anxiety, something since I was a little kid that helped me was focusing on what is the next thing that's exciting coming up, and I want to enjoy and dive into that. So the past few years, I feel like it's been this like awkward thing with the 4th of July coming up, because I like to think that I am patriotic, and I think that that term can feel loaded, but I think we need to reclaim that word for what it really is, which is not America, fuck yeah. It's, I want growth and healing and actually the freedoms and liberties that we are promised to be at the forefront of this nation. Right? If you have anything to add, I need to take a sip of my drink and wet my whistle.
I think that while you're saying that, I was also thinking about it's on the 4th of July fun to kind of get into the Americana mode of listening to music about America and celebrating. I think it's honestly a holiday where a lot of people do get outside, which I appreciate about it. It's very traditional to like get on the river or get in water and have that sort of coming together. And I think that a lot of those parts about it are beyond just, as we know, holidays don't just like stay firmly rooted in the tradition that maybe they started, and it's a complicated notion even to go back thinking about Independence Day, because we're celebrating like a separation from a colonial power, but the United States was like a huge colonial project of itself.
Yeah.
So it's tied up in all of these different layers, and when you think about Americana, like the music of Bruce Springsteen and Waylon Jennings and art, like great American artists, they're often
Taylor
like
Swift.
exactly, being deeply critical of the government and of the country. I think that's a good thing to remember, seeing people post like "Born in the USA" and whatnot. If you look into the meaning behind these things, it's not just being like, "Woo, yeah, America, let's go." It's like being very critical about the country in which we live in. So I think that it's a great opportunity to not only celebrate a country, but deeply like criticize the situation. It reminds me of the James Baldwin quote that now I do not know verbatim at all, but the sentiment of what he says is, I love America more than any other country, which is why I reserve the right to constantly criticize her and try to change like all the aspects that are something not to be proud of. That is not exactly what he said. You can go look up the quote, but
well, that's a lot. I was thinking about that too with the whole nostalgia. I've just been being really critical in dissecting what it is I'm feeling about the 4th of July. Clearly, I don't have to explain that to you with the episode that we're recording right now. But when I was digging deep, thinking, okay, obviously the nostalgia is, in a way, it's not surface level, because I think that positive moments in your childhood are actually hugely important. And if revisiting that feels nostalgic and positive and sentimental, I think that's actually a very powerful and important thing. But, you know, some of that stuff maybe is like on one layer, but I was thinking another layer down, like why do I still feel like I want to celebrate it, even with the position I'm in, where I'm obviously very infuriated by, I heard someone say infuriated. I don't know if it was on Love Island or something, and now I can't get it out of my head.
It's got a ring to it.
Infuriated with the state of the government and decisions being made, and we are clearly fighting by calling and emailing our representatives about what we believe and using our platform. But I still feel this want to celebrate it, and I think on a deeper level it's because this is my home. This is my only home I've ever known. I do love America. I love this country. I love the people here. Like, so many of the people, it's my comfort zone. It's who I feel most at ease around, typically, because we have so much shared experience and how we've been brought up. And I love that it's such a vast nation where there are so many cultures within our nation. And whatever, the fact of it being a melting pot, but also the way you can road trip to the most beautiful national parks. And so I feel at home here. This is where I feel safest. This country I consider home. And when you love a place and you feel that way about something, to me, where the patriotism comes in is we want to fight for what we believe our rights are in this country. And it gets complicated when you think of what it was truly founded upon, because I love the idea of liberty and justice for all. It's clear that that is not the truth of how this nation was founded, but for me, feel like I'm in this fight and have this patriotism of wanting to make it what I believe it should be and can be, and seeking justice for all Americans and all that want to be Americans and want to make the USA their home. So, I'll dive in a little bit to what our 4th of July day looked like. The first thing that struck me on the evening of July 3rd, Sean and I were talking about, what do we want to do? Do we want to have a little bit of a grill situation going? And even growing up vegetarian, I was vegetarian pretty much my whole life until college. There would be, a meat I would have here and there, but pretty rarely. But on 4th of July, and when there was a hot dog going on, I was definitely having a hot dog. So I felt like, why don't we do hot dogs? And decided
Especially because if anybody had a hot dog, probably a vegan/vegetarian hot dog pre-2015, you will know they were nothing to write home about.
My mom would have the veggie dog always, and at that point in time, I was like, yeah, that's not scratching the itch for me. It's a terrible substitute. Now I'm sure there are really delicious ones, and now I've had more of the vegetable hamburger patties where it actually tastes like the vegetables and good seasoning, and I can get more down with that than something that just tastes, I won't get the idea of what those veggie hot dogs tasted like out of my mind, and I quickly, even though not being a picky eater, I was like, I'm vegetarian on my own volition, and I'm deciding to have a hot dog, because this slaps, that sucks, and it's the 4th of July, let's do this. So that got me excited, because it's very rare that I have hot dogs, and the last time I had hot dogs, they were from Little Creek in Montana, which is a super cool ranch that I highly suggest you guys following. Big Sky Caroline is her handle on social media. I just think she's awesome. She has created a really cool feed store there that's just a small town feed store, but it's so beautiful. I would love, it's like on my bucket list to go visit her feed store in their little Montana town. Anyway, we thought, okay, well, what do we need for supplies? And we're thinking, yep, this, we're gonna do the full hot dog bun. But it occurred to me, what's a sourdough girl doing if they're not going to try making their own hot dog buns? So found a recipe for those, and they just went splendidly. I was so excited, and I had to trust my intuition, because some of the timing on the recipe, I just figured because of the way I make sourdough that I would have a good idea of what the timing was going to be for it. But then when I looked on the recipe, the timing, I was like, oh, how long you're saying for the bulk rise and stuff? I would literally be having to get up in the middle of the night, and that's not how I want to go into my celebration of 4th of July. So I just trusted my instincts, and with the timing, I did everything with the proofs and the rises the way that I was used to, and it all worked out great. So I'm happy with that. And oh my gosh, they turned out so, first of all, cute, and wanted to squish them, but
they were giving kawaii.
They were so cute, and they were delicious We had had one hot dog with our dinner the night before, so there was an uneven number, and we decided to eat one of the buns a little bit after it had came out of the oven just to see, like, what are we working with? Oh my gosh, like, Sean and I both said this is the only hot dog bun that we have ever been interested in eating plain. So good.
Yeah.
So that was clearly a huge highlight of mine, and we did the dogs on the grill. We did some summer squashes and mushrooms and corn and ate a lot of watermelon. Oh my gosh, how could I bring up the 4th of July and not bring up my favorite thing? A ripe watermelon in the summer. Whew. It was delicious. I had a couple different little festive outfits, which I really enjoyed. And again, that's another thing where it's like, I know people are like, why are you dressing red, white, and blue if you believe in free Palestine? And I'm like, I am taking this land back. We are taking it back. And it also occurs to me, thinking of the podcast, I've Had It. They are they will lay it down and put the facts out there, you guys. But their whole thing is welcome to the podcast, everyone. Patriots, gaytriots, and theytriots, and they're all about reclaiming being a patriot, and that's just how I feel. I feel in this mode of reclaiming that title.
I think that it's important because if you believe in the possibility of a better nation, then you kind of have to have a streak of patriotism. And sometimes in my circles of people that I really understand where they're coming from, of feeling like, I'm not proud of the history of this nation, I'm not proud of the current situation, and they don't feel like there's something there that they can hitch their wagon to. It's totally understandable, but it can get very nihilistic, and of course, I'm still figuring it out. I'm not only a young woman that I, have only had so much time to, fully understand the context and the history, yada yada yada. Point being, I feel like when I'm feeling nihilistic about a situation, that doesn't inspire me to do anything. Like, where is there to go from there? What are we going to work on if you already believe, that there's no possibility of a better future for a situation? And I read a book called Hope in the Dark that really encourages working from a place of hopefulness, and that your activism has to be grounded in hope. Otherwise, again, why would you join the fight, the movement, whatever you want to call it? Why would you put your energy into something if you already believe that there's nowhere to go from here? While I also understand that you can see the system and think, this is totally corrupt, this is totally problematic, and it feels like it was meant to be this way, and so what are we going to do? I can totally empathize with that feeling, and also form the stance that I have currently is that we have to, believe that there's an opportunity for progress and an opportunity for betterment, and I don't think that we will ever arrive to a perfect system in a country that's operating perfectly in the way that in my ideal vision of the world it would be. But improvement is improvement, and I don't think that we should throw the baby out with the bathwater, because I think that will ultimately do more harm than good. And that's coming from, I don't even believe in the concept of borders. I don't believe that anyone can, have any more right to land on this side of a line than this one. I don't believe that humans belong to certain places more than other humans. Migration has happened forever, like that. All of those things I think are true, but we are living in the world that we're living in the system that we're living in. It doesn't mean those systems can't be reformed, but I do think that sometimes the liberal movement specifically, of which I am liberal,
Of which I am a part.
of which I participate in, sometimes we can do a disservice to the ideas that are very valuable that are being put forward by holding each other and everything to a standard of perfection. That because this doesn't look like how it should look like, of liberty and justice for all, truly equal freedoms, truly equal rights, if you're not doing your liberalism perfectly enough, then you're against us. And that mentality is so isolating to people that even Quinn and I, who again hold these ideals, feel like nervous to just have conversations on a podcast, not being dogmatic, not telling you what's what, not speaking from a place of I know and you don't, so listen up. Just to discuss these ideas can feel really challenging because I fully have friends that would put their foot down and say, if you don't say, like, fuck America, then you're not doing it good enough. And that's just a hard place, I think, for people to work from. And if people believe that there's no opportunity for growth because they're already going to be condemned, then unfortunately I think they're going to go in the other direction. I kind of diverged from what you were saying. I'm sorry, it's hard to talk about these topics linearly. So I hope I was building.
I think you did great. I think that it's, something that I think the right side, like Republicans, I'm not saying the correct side, but I do think that's something I can give them credit for, is saying there's so much to be grateful for. And that, then, hold your horses, everybody, because I know that there are so many beliefs that come from that. Like, I'm in a country where I'm guaranteed my freedom. No, that I don't believe. I would love that. Again, that's something I believe in working toward for sure. But I do believe that there is a lot to be grateful for. And if we're not grateful for what we have, to me, you can find gratitude in almost any situation. And for us, like, I get to live in a way where, thinking of the land that I get to live on and the shelter that I'm able to afford and the amount I'm able to charge and that I'm able to make as an artist, a lot of that has a lot to do with where I live. So I feel super grateful for that.
Also,
and
let's be very honest, that's a lot of the times in my circles, I confess up to this because I have been a part of that. Sometimes the people that are the most great, this country makes it impossible for us to live in a dignified way. We don't have access to good health care. These problems that are fair, real issues that people run up against. But we're often speaking from a very privileged place, and we're not actually the people in America that face the worst consequences, even though there are consequences, and you're allowed to validate your experience of things that need to be improved upon without also acting like this country is a prison for me when, let's be honest, again, we're not the ones that are going to face the harshest repercussions. We're not at risk of being deported. We're at a much reduced risk of facing police brutality. These issues that America has, I just do think that often the people that express that discontent valid to feel, and also valid to say, I know I'm not the one that maybe you would face this, but nobody should have to. That is a great place to work from in activism. You should care about what's happening to other people and not just yourself. But I think when you hear from immigrants that are at risk in this country and, you know, have a lot of perils that they face, will still often discuss like the amount of opportunity they came to America for and the hope that they have for the country. Like, a lot of the times there's more patriotism there of believing in like the possibilities of this nation, because we can take it for granted when you're generationally from here. And I'll speak more to that talking about my 4th of July experience, but I interrupted you.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that it is a very important thing to look outside of yourself and walk in other people's shoes. I think that's what activism and allyship specifically is all about. You can be an ally, and it's important to, even when you don't have that experience. We obviously need to think about the experiences of others and be grateful for what we have, and think, I mean, as you guys know, and I've mentioned on the podcast multiple times, with the land that I live on and I have access to, and my equine get to graze, and I get to enjoy every single day, I know that this is native land. I am going to be grateful for it. Like, it honestly makes me emotional, because we have to honor and acknowledge the sacrifice, and it's so hard because there was and is so much violence and so much that I have such a hard time reckoning with how our nation was founded and how it continues to operate, especially under when the people in power are the people we have in power today. It's very disheartening and very frustrating, because to me, it's so important that we fight for these lands to continue to be protected and appreciated. And there's the amount of issues we could bring up that we believe in. I mean, it's endless. Like, thinking about what we have done to the native people of this land is earth-shattering. But without, like Riley's saying, without hope and belief that change can happen, it's going to stay as bad as it is or get worse. Like, you need to have people who still have insight and believe in what there can be to be able to make progress forward. Progress doesn't happen by giving up and turning away and turning a blind eye and moving to a different country. And that, I'm not saying don't do that. I totally think it's fair if people want to move, or if people feel at their wits' end and make that decision because of our government, or make that decision because they want a different life. Just like other people should be able to make the decision to move here because that's the life they envision for themselves. I had something else on my mind, but I'm sure it'll come back around. And why don't you start talking about your 4th of July, Ray?
Okay. I might be long-winded because
There's a lot to say.
There's a lot to say, but interrupt me if you need to. So, Brayden and I went to a naturalization ceremony on the 4th, which, for those of you that don't know that term, that is basically a certain route of becoming a citizen. And this ceremony was held at Monticello, which already just that has a lot to unpack there. Monticello was Thomas Jefferson's home, but it was also I don't know if you would say a plantation. I don't know if that has like a specific type of connotation, but he had hundreds of enslaved people living and working on this property. And so while he was writing the Declaration of Independence, he was literally on a hill situated above all these rows of tiny shanty houses that housed enslaved workers. So there were a lot of feelings already for me going into this because I was excited to see this ceremony, and I always have a complicated feeling about visiting plantations. I think that on the one hand, it's important to like actually look at your history and reckon with that. On another, I totally understand people that feel like I would never want to go to that, and that's a valid way to feel. However, we knew somebody that was getting their citizenship, but we also just wanted to see it because we'd heard how powerful it was, and we got up early. It's a morning ceremony, and got out there, and already there was just such a cool feeling in the air because everyone there is somebody that like wants to see immigrants receive their citizenship. Like, it's people that are on board with the idea of diversity makes America America, and that makes our country better. And it started with, an opening ceremony with a speaker, and she did a great job of acknowledging like the complication of Thomas Jefferson as a person who was a great thinker and held a lot of great Enlightenment ideals, and clearly was also complicit in a horrendous part of history. And then the keynote speaker was Ken Burns, who is a documentarian that's made a lot of films about America. Specifically, like, he does American themes. He has a documentary called Jazz, one called Baseball, one on the Civil War, and he has one coming out this fall that's on the American Revolution. I can't really speak to any of his work because I maybe saw like a episode of one on History Channel or something. I'm interested in checking it out, but apparently the older folks that were there, were really excited to hear him speak. And he did, I think, a really great job as well. His speech really focused on the history of immigration to the US, and that every time we see like these waves of immigration, there is pushback, and there are people that want to blame the problems that already exist in our country on those other people. And what we always talk about of the fact that every white person in America was either a recent immigrant or a descendant of immigrants, and if you're not indigenous to Turtle Island, then you're an immigrant. And even if you are, you look farther back in history to immigration. Immigration is just the human way. Like, we don't just stay and settle in one place and never leave. There are people with much deeper roots in a certain area of land. But all of that was great, but what I really want to get to, because I could talk about the whole ceremony a long time, are the 74 people that got naturalized. And it was really special to hear all of their names being read out in the program. You could follow along, but I forget how many countries, but people from 5 different continents and tens of countries were getting their citizenship. And there was an opportunity for the new citizens to speak, and that was just very powerful and moving. Already I had been crying. It was just an emotional situation to think about and grapple with, because I completely abhor a lot of the politics that are going on in the States right now, and while throughout all of this country's history, we have had issues with immigrants, and immigration has never stopped being like a campaign issue for people. That's just part and parcel with this country. I don't have context for other countries where I didn't grow up, but I think that that is part of government that people are concerned about. But clearly, the Trump administration is taking it way, way further than a lot of administrations have, and the just what I would consider war on immigrants is going on with deploying ICE and hordes and militarized police on people, and the camp that is being set up in the Everglades, as well as other detention centers just having overflow, horrible conditions. It's just a very dark time, in my feeling, to be an immigrant, because you were coming to this country in many cases for a chance of political, religious freedom. And then it just breaks my heart to think that people are coming to this country for the opportunities that it can afford them, and then being treated, I wouldn't even say like criminals, because I don't think that, like, even as criminals, what's a criminal? Like someone that gets found with a joint in a state where it's illegal, or someone that's committed murder? That's obviously, like, there's a huge spectrum of crime. Pretty much every one of us has broken the law. I know for a fact that I'm part of it, so we shouldn't be treating criminals in a dehumanizing way either. That's opening up a whole other can of worms. But just being treated abhorrently in a way that no being deserves. And so I think all of those feelings going into it, I just came kind of feeling like we don't have a lot to be proud of what we can offer the immigrants to our country right now. But hearing these new citizens speak, I think it is good to keep into context that is not to dismiss those problems, but that the situation here for a lot of people is a huge improvement. And, you know, there are also people that immigrated from Denmark or the Netherlands, so that it's not necessarily for a political asylum, or they have a partner that lives here and so they're moving for love or a job, whatever. I'm not saying that every immigrant has this story, but particularly a woman from Afghanistan spoke, and that really was just so moving to hear her speak about her as a woman specifically coming to a country where she said, I couldn't even do this in Afghanistan to come like in front of people. By the way, there are hundreds of people there. I wonder how many spectators there were. It would have been very intimidating to speak up. I'm so proud of her and everyone that did, because she clearly, English was not her first language. It's difficult to even speak in conversation one-to-one when you're feeling vulnerable about using a new language and speaking in front of all these people, maybe over 1,000. Like, it's a lot of people, and they stream it online, so it was a very vulnerable thing to do. And she just reminded me that even though I do think that women's rights are being targeted, because we still have a system of misogyny and patriarchy that is totally not okay. And like we've learned from the different waves of feminism, you can't just be like a white woman in America and act like this is the biggest atrocity to feminism that exists, because it's clearly not. And she just said how this is like her first opportunity in her life to be able to go get a job as an individual, go into public spaces unaccompanied by a man, use her voice in whatever way she chooses to. And yeah, just very, very stark to what she was used to. And she just said that she was not going to take the opportunities afforded to her by being an American for granted.
That is a very moving story, and that I think speaks so much to what we're talking about, that we really do need to appreciate and be grateful for the rights and privileges we do have. We cannot turn a blind eye just because we want better, and we always deserve better. But I think that I'm sure hearing that made a huge impact and makes you reflect on how much gratitude you really have for the rights you're afforded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a woman from the Congo spoke as well, just about the fact that she didn't feel like everyday life that there was any physical safety there, and just taking even that for granted. And you look at certain neighborhoods and certain areas in the US, and of course that's not like equally there for anyone either. But again, just for me personally, digesting these sentiments from people where I have grown up in privileged areas, and I have grown up with relative like assuredness of physical safety. When I've gotten pulled over by the cops, I didn't like that feeling, but I didn't think that they were going to yank me out of my car and assault me, and that's not true for all people. So again, it's just the context that is important to me to be reminded of, that when I can feel like, you know, the situation here is so bad, to just remember that you're not like, that you're lucky. And I think sometimes over history people have used that. I know I felt this like talking to some of my elders about like, you should just be grateful to be an American, to kind of dismiss your desire for action and change. But I'm not saying it from that context. I'm saying that from the place of knowing that we have made progress, I think is a great launching pad to continue forward, and not to feel like, wow, you know, we're just in the same boat that our family was in the early 1900s, when it's like, that's not true. Like, there has been forward and back, and it's not just like over time we're guaranteed for things to become more socially progressive and things will always become better and safer for people. That's not what happens. Therefore, we need to like use the rights, the privilege, the opportunities that we have to try to push things forward, and not just for you and people like you, but for everyone. And at the end of the day, that was probably, I've had some, like you said, very nostalgic, very fun 4th of Julys, but I felt like this was just a particularly moving and impactful 4th of July that I'm really glad we participated in, and didn't just write it off as a fuck America situation, because I want to be from a country that people believe they can come to for more peace in their life, that they can come to and have opportunities that they wouldn't elsewhere. And that's
And
worth fighting
and for them, think about, for so many immigrants, 4th of July is actually so exciting and something that they really celebrate, because sometimes I think we need to give ourselves the privilege of celebrating ourselves and celebrating progress. And again, I'm not saying celebrating Donald Trump. I'm not saying celebrating the oligarchy, but celebrating, I was on the phone with my senators for days and days and days. When this opportunity comes up to celebrate ourselves and celebrate the progress and the people we believe are change makers and that are, even just our communities, I think sometimes we deserve to celebrate and feel like we can't keep fighting the big fight without finding joy and finding moments to celebrate. And that's key, you guys, remembering that joy is resistance as well. So thank you for listening to our episode. We hope that some of this is food for thought, and we're always open to hearing what you guys think about it. You can let us know over our Instagram DMs. We are grateful for you and grateful to have this platform to be able to share our opinions. So thank you, and Riley, I love you.
I love you too. We are grateful that though not everyone gets to exercise that right as freely as they deserve, that we do live in a country where we can come on here, talk about opinions, talk about politics, and reserve the right to do so. And Quinn and I will always advocate for everyone to have access to that freedom, regardless of if we agree with you or not. And thank you for thinking through the big things and little things with us. We will be back with you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.